Welcome to Japan Seikatsu. I'm Ian, and today I would like to discuss what it's really like to work in Japan. Now, please be sure to stay to the very end because I'm going to be sharing some tips today to help you navigate the question of, should I work in Japan? Now, as always, if you enjoy the content, smash that like button, and please join our growing community by clicking subscribe. Let's get started. First, let's discuss the narrative about working in Japan. And it's not usually a very positive narrative. It's that the work-life balance doesn't really exist, that you're going to be working long hours, you're going to be working weekends, that there's a lot of toxic work environments. And fundamentally, if we look at this equation, this work-life balance, because you're working so much, that work time is taking up so much, you've got very little life time, very little personal time, less free time. Where in many countries outside of Japan, you have a better balance, and therefore you've got more time that you can do with what you would like, and so that work-life balance is more in balance. I have a few observations about that, having lived in the United Kingdom and in the US and in Japan. Let's say that, for example, there is more working hours in Japan, and therefore you have less personal time. What I have observed is that there is a lot of time spent in the US or in the UK on dealing with stuff that you wouldn't be dealing with in Japan. For example, stuff breaking down. You need to call the plumber. The plumber hasn't arrived on time. When he comes, oh no, we actually need the electrician. And all of a sudden half your Sunday is gone because another thing has broken. And I've seen this on new builds, in addition to older builds, where in 8 years of living in Japan, I did not call a repair person once for any of the apartments I lived in. And I lived in both old buildings and newer buildings, and I never saw a repair person even come into any of the offices I was working at, which is strange because working in the US or UK, I see repairmen coming in. And where I've lived, I see them coming in. It's strange to me now to think that I didn't even know who to call if something broke in my apartment in Japan, where I have these people on speed dial now. But that's just a small example, and it's many things. It's, okay, the train never showed up because I'm not sure. I've just wasted an hour. This bank rep isn't picking up the phone. This customer service desk isn't answering. All of this time, which is our personal time, right? Because we have that life-work balance, is getting lost because we're kind of dealing with this stuff that's not working as smoothly as it does in Japan. So yes, in Japan, maybe you're working more hours, but the tax of that beautiful system, that well-oiled machine where people come on time, people do what they say they're going to do, things don't break. The cost of that is that we're all working a little bit extra. And so you get to enjoy that. That's a benefit. So I would share that as an observation, that it's not as black and white that, look, you get more free hours outside of Japan than you would in Japan. Yeah, well, a lot of those hours are spent doing another sort of job, trying to get stuff repaired, etc. But also in terms of national holidays, Japan has 16 national holidays. In the UK, only 8. So those are free holidays. That's a lot of holidays. So many holidays that I think they're kind of running out of names for some of these holidays in Japan. But also there's benefits, like a lot of Japanese companies will pay for your train pass, and so you don't need a car, you don't need to be paying for gasoline. You save time and money there. So there's a lot of benefits that I think are not often brought into the conversation when we talk about this life-work balance in Japan. Now, if I can share my personal experience, And I think my experience, I've seen similar things in colleagues or friends that work and live in Japan. But let me share my experience because that's what I know best. So I worked for 3 years at a public junior high school in Tokushima. And I also worked for a little more than 3 years in the finance industry for a Japanese company in Tokyo, and 4 years working for that same Japanese company in the UK. So I've worked for a Japanese company for the past nearly a decade. And what I found was at the junior high school while I was on the JET program, my hours were quite reasonable. If you're familiar with the JET program, you're an assistant language teacher. And so I was coming in at 8, and I think we were able to leave at 4. I think I would usually stick around to 5 or 6. I did see a lot of the teachers were working long hours. Many of them did have weekend obligations because they were doing bukatsu, so they were coaching sports. So the teachers in a lot of Japanese schools, in my view, work very long hours. This is something that the system is trying to reform, and I hope that they are able to improve it because we cannot have our teachers getting burned out. They're nurturing the people that are going to be taking care of us, the future generation. So, but they were working long hours. However, a lot of the ALTs were working very, very reasonable hours. Now, in the private sector, when I was working in Tokyo, I was working more hours than I was on the JET program, but they were entirely reasonable hours. And just for some comparison, when I worked in the US, I worked at IBM and I was doing consulting. I was working no more in Japan than I was in the US. I found them to be very comparable. So there is a data point. Another thing as well is that it's okay to work hard. You know, how many worthwhile things in your life have you accomplished without hard work? I mean, have you ever been when you were in school on a winning sports team where you didn't pour it all on, day in and day out? And it creates wonderful things. I mean, you've got camaraderie, friendships that sometimes last a lifetime, memories. You grow as a person, as an athlete, as a teammate. The same thing is true in working for a company, which is why it's important that you find something that you're passionate about. Because when you put that time in, you develop those relationships with colleagues. And I found that the work environment in Japan was conducive to really building deep relationships with your colleagues, much more so than in the US. So in the US, I felt like I had a job. In Japan, I've always felt that I have a career, and I feel that my colleagues would, if I needed, really be willing to put in the extra time to be able to help me get a project across the finish line. There's a close-knit camaraderie, and I would say that comes with hard work, and I would say that develops you as a person, and I think that's a good thing. Now, of course, there are some toxic environments in Japan, and there is some truth to the generalization that a lot of Japanese workers work very long hours. This is acknowledged by the Japanese government. They have made it a core policy for years now to try to reform this working culture, to get Japanese employees to spend more time with family or personal time, to try to bring that life-work balance a little bit into better balance. And I think progress is being made. Now, for you as an individual that's trying to navigate this, what I would keep in mind is a few things. One is that toxic environments exist in all countries. So you could have a toxic work environment in your own country. And the same thing happens in Japan. So the principles to either ideally avoiding, or if you find yourself in a toxic work environment, in extricating yourself from that work environment, I think are the same, which is the most important investment is you. You need skills that are in demand, and ideally you've found an industry for yourself that you're passionate about. That will be your tailwind, that will be your battery pack, that will provide the energy to keep moving forward. And with that, as you develop more skills that are in demand, then the more optionality you have to go to another company, or maybe start something on your own. So another very important thing, which I say in many of my videos, is it's always important to save and to invest, so that you have an emergency fund, you've got some capital, so that you're not dependent and that you have optionality. So I would take the you're in the driver's seat mindset. The reason I'm sharing this video today is because I know that there are people that are considering working in Japan, but the prevailing narrative that the work-life culture isn't good is stopping some people from doing that. And I think that could be a shame for somebody who is passionate about Japan and may find happiness working in Japan. And I think it's a loss for Japan if they're losing talent to this prevailing narrative. So all I would like to do is just to provide another data point for you to consider, another perspective. And I have friends, colleagues that I'm sure would echo this. I think the more negative narrative that you hear or you see on blogs or YouTube is partially because when people are upset or they have a negative experience, you're more likely to share that during that difficult time. And so I think there's more of that out there on the internet, where if you enjoy your job, but you're a normal person that's quite busy with a career and maybe a young family, you're probably not blogging about it or writing about it. So I don't think that side of the story gets out there as much, and that's why I'm sharing this today. Now, it's very important that you be in the driver's seat, and when we look at Japan, to remember how large Japan is. And if your dream is to work in Japan, you don't need to find 10 jobs. You need to find one job that aligns with you. Let's take Tokyo. Tokyo has 37 million people. This is greater Tokyo. And a GDP, the size of the economy, is 1.8 trillion US dollars. Canada is the same size. Canada has about 37 million people, and their GDP is about 1.8 trillion US dollars. So if I said to you, do you think you could find a job that's rewarding, has a great mentor and coworkers in the country of Canada? You would say, of course I can. Well, it's the same thing. I mean, just Tokyo is that large. There is an abundance of opportunities, and it's an international city. There's so many different industries and so many different niche needs that you could fill. So I'm just speaking about Tokyo. I mean, there's other huge cities in Osaka, Nagoya. There's many cities, Sapporo or Fukuoka, and there's countryside opportunities. I taught English in rural Tokushima for 3 years. So have that mindset that you're in the driver's seat. There is an abundance of opportunity here. And this is a very large and complex country with a lot of opportunities. So the narrative of Japanese working life is difficult is one narrative. But please do also give consideration to other perspectives. Well, as always, please be sure to ask your questions or share comments down below, especially to those that have worked in Japan. What's been your experience? And to those that are considering working in Japan, what are your thoughts? Do you have any questions? I'll do my best to answer. And please, to the community out there, jump in. If you've got an experience or an answer to share, please do. As always, thank you for your time. Please be sure to click like, share the content, and of course, subscribe to Japan Seikatsu. Take care.